What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here with the quartering, and we've got a follow-up story on the Bioware expose that came out 2 days ago, I believe, and now we have Bioware admitting that their workplace is toxic and some of the fallout that's happened after that. Now, I don't want to spend too much time rehashing the story, as most of you already know what was going on. The 30,000-foot view is this. Bioware took 7 years to develop Anthem. They basically dicked around for 6 years and had to stress everyone out that last year and a half to finish the game. Many of the staff had no idea what Anthem would even be until they saw the E3 trailer. And at that point, the game didn't even exist. One of the worst bunglings of project management I think I've ever seen in my entire life. And that goes beyond just gaming. To have 7 years and essentially have EA come out to you and buy Bioware and say, like, look, you've had enough time. This game's coming out. And then having them put together using what they now refer to negatively as Bioware magic to finish the game had a lot of casualties, a lot of stress casualties. Grown men and women crying, having to take up to 90-day work sabbaticals for stress. And I know it's easy to kind of judge these folks and, say like, oh, come on, like, are you really crying at work? Well, to be honest with you, not everyone's built to handle that level of stress. And people handle stress in many different ways. I myself left a company after having to lay off a large amount of staff, and I just couldn't handle it after that. Did I cry at work? No, but I ended up handling my stress in other ways by basically melting down and quitting that job over something that I probably should have stuck out, because now, looking back, that's the way business works sometimes. Sometimes people pick up bad habits like drinking or smoking or doing other things, So a little office closet cry is probably the least harmful of things that people could do to pick up, to deal with their stress. But the report that Jason Schreier put out spoke to, I believe, about 17 or 20 former Bioware employees and cataloged the absolute mess from beginning to end. And essentially, Bioware was absolutely exposed. And it's not, and I think it's important to remember that we're looking at the upper management here. We're not looking at the 85 to 90% of staff, the grunts, the people that are coming into work and working 10, 12, 14 hours a day to make things happen. It's impossible to understand, at least in my opinion, until you've been there, to have your work basically thrown out and you have to restart over and over and over and over and over again. I can't imagine what that does to a creative. I don't view my mind as, a creative type person. I'm an analytical person. I'm good at understanding analytics, finding trends, and that's what I do for a living. I always viewed graphic designers, web designers, coders, these people as essentially having a gift, having their minds just work in different ways. And so the idea that they become enamored with their own work, they fall in love with their work, only to have it thrown out time and time again, probably takes a major toll on these folks. So Bioware's initial response was, as Jason Schreier put it, extremely cowardly, basically saying, well, we didn't read the article and we don't believe in criticizing anyone directly, even though the entire world, everybody watching this video and elsewhere, knew that there was obviously major problems at Bioware. And after all of this came out, I wouldn't be surprised to see some major changes and shakeups at Bioware. The problem is right now they need to support the half of a game that they put out that everyone paid full price for. So I'm not sure EA is going to make any massive changes right now. The time to watch is going to be when the game is more mature and they're in a support phase as opposed to a development phase. Now, yesterday, Bioware CEO put out a letter to its employees. After days of silence, Bioware admits at its studio to employees. It admits that it has a toxic work environment and that the problems are real. The statement was criticized for not addressing the issues directly. That's their initial statement. But Wednesday, Bioware general manager, not the CEO, my apologies, Casey Hudson, sent a new note to employees calling the workplace problems at the studio, quote, real, and Bioware's, quote, top priority to continue to solve them. Now, I have very little faith, but if you're a Bioware developer and you're a Bioware employee, I think you have no option but to be faithful or be looking for other jobs. The article mentions many of the problems in development of Anthem in some of our previous projects and draws a link between those issues and the quality of our workplace and well-being of our staff. These problems are, quote, real. It's not quote, real. These are real. This whole thing is a quote. And it's our top priority. Continue to work to solve them. Later in the statement, Casey Hudson addresses how Bioware intends to combat some of these problems. Quote, we are defining better role clarity so that people can succeed better against clear expectations and putting place production changes that will provide for clearer project vision, as well as significant post-production period that will further relieve pressure and anxiety on teams during development. Now, this is after 2 major development cycles with Dragon Age and, of course, Anthem. I have a hard time believing that people like Casey Hudson, people who are already in charge of things, are just going to magically want to fix the problem now. I think the problems at Bioware, unfortunately, are systemic, meaning they are deeply ingrained in the way that the company works and the way that AAA development works. All AAA developers are going to have a crunch period. This is unavoidable. To demand major changes to the way games are developed to remove this crunch period is to not understand how development really works. Almost nothing ever follows a perfect development rollout cycle if you've ever worked. And this isn't even true of just game development. Any development cycle, for the most part, is going to have a major crunch period at the end when you have a go live date on major projects. If you're talking about a small, simple project, it's easy to deliver in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. But when you're talking about a full-scale e-commerce rollout or really any type of API development and stuff like that, you're always going to have last-minute changes in a crunch period. This is the reality of development. When you work for clients, in this case, EA, in my case, many e-commerce clients, they always demand changes. They want changes at the last minute. There's a problem in this industry called scope creep, meaning I wanted a castle with 2 towers and I wanted it built out of clay. And then by the end of the project, it's a castle with a moat and a trap door and alligators and LED lights and turrets and catapults and everything else. That's the unfortunate reality of the development cycle, not just for video games, but for anything major. And a good project management team doesn't eliminate that. It does mitigate it, though. Learning to say no is an important skill to have, and I'm not sure that many people in the game development world have enough experience developing big projects to know that word. We've talked about many times Activision with the layoffs, now Bioware, which undoubtedly will have layoffs after all of this. Experience, managing people, making a bunch of money at a young age. You know, these are all issues that get exposed in times of crunch. Not understanding how to motivate your people, how to incentivize your staff. These are systemic problems of the leadership at Bioware, and you could say also at places like Activision and probably many major development firms. When you look up and down, there seems to be basically a bunch of 20-year-olds that work at these companies and then a bunch of boomers. There's very few people in the middle who have the chops, who have the experience, who have done this all before. Bioware has absolutely no excuse, in my opinion, to be trotting out this BS that, well, we know that this is a problem and now we're going to work on it. Where was that during Dragon Age when you knew it was a problem? Where was it during the entire Anthem development process? Where was it until you were exposed? This is a problem that must be dealt with at the highest levels beyond Bioware, I believe, in this case. I believe EA will need to intervene here and get some true experience on that team. Now, Bioware did have to deal with a lot of their best developers, their quote, not mine, getting moved off to more profitable games like FIFA and things like that. But again, experience and planning. These are two core tenets of management, and they don't have any of it. Hudson says there's still more work to be done in this front, and that the studio will discuss it further, and all hands planned for next week. Oh, so more crunch time. You can read the full statement at Kotaku, which we'll look at. Bioware released Anthem to middling reviews. I think that would be generous. Players and critics didn't find Bioware's online loot shooter compelling enough as an online experience, and popular features like flight were only late-game additions to the game. The live service model could set the stage for a comeback for Anthem, like the first Destiny did, but that remains to be seen. And I, for one, don't want to see this as a norm. You know what I mean? Like, people have already paid for the game. And now I have to what? Hope that in a year it's worth playing? I mean, what about all the people that paid full price for the game up front? The head of Bioware addressed a Kotaku report on the studio's cultural issues yesterday afternoon, acknowledging that the problems are real. On Tuesday, Kotaku posted an investigation into what happened behind the scenes at Anthem, a story that also divided into culture problems impacting Bioware's current and former employees. The piece discussed indecision, mismanagement, and the production practice referred to as, quote, Bioware magic, a belief that with enough hard work and enough crunch, every project will coalesce at the last minute. The article also detailed the stress, depression, and anxiety that has led to dozens of employees leaving Bioware over the past 2 years. Here is the actual letter. We're going to take a look at this real quick. I wanted to get a note to share my thoughts on the Kotaku article and the online discussion it has raised. The article mentions many of the problems in the development Anthem and some previous projects, and it draws links between those issues and the quality of workplace and the well-being of our staff. These problems are real, and it's our top priority to continue working to solve them. Now, this is saying the right thing. What I honestly hope for all the employees at Bioware is that they follow through and they do it, yet they've shown absolutely no ability to do such a thing on their own volition. It's sad when it takes an online expose for you to give a damn about your employees. What we found out of bounds was naming specific developers targets for public criticism. It's unfair and extremely traumatizing to single out people in this way. I mean, okay, fine, you're not the victim. This paragraph should not have even been in here. When I was offered the opportunity to return to Bioware's GM, I came into the role knowing the studio was experiencing significant challenges in team health, creative vision, organizational focus. I was and continue to be, quote, excited to help drive improvements in those areas because I love this studio and I want to create a place where all of you are happy and successful. I hope he means this. I hope he means this. I know there's much to do, and we will talk more in detail about other actions as planning in response to internal feedback and postmortems at next week's, quote, all hands. That's the name of the meeting. As always, please continue to provide feedback and further steps we can do to make Bioware the best possible place to work. I'm committed to getting us in a place where we are delivering the highest expectations for Bioware games through a work environment that's among the best in the world, the very best in the world. Now, to wrap this up, I don't sympathize with suits at development companies. This is, in my opinion, a fundamental problem with experience and resource management. In this case, resource is the humans that work there. As somebody who's ran teams of 30, 40 people in my life, you have to maintain morale, you have to maintain motivation, and you have to do this differently for each type of people. You may have people that are creatively driven on your team that are more motivated by half-day Fridays. You may have more financially driven people on your team that are motivated by incentive-based pay, meaning get your work done on time, you get bonuses. You may have people in the middle. What I mean is you have to manage your people differently. You can't have just one style overarching everything. And it seems like Bioware and other development companies simply don't understand this. You had 7 years to finish this game. Don't tell me that you didn't have enough time. Don't tell me that there were other issues that plagued you. Proper planning, proper resource management, and taking care of your team should have been top priority. And when you have people coming into work dreading it, dreading their day, you're not getting the best out of your team. I sincerely hope that Bioware means what they're saying, that Casey means what they're saying, and then I hope that other development companies, other publishers in this space, all take heed and get proactive and don't need to be exposed to take care of their people. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll talk to you again real soon.